We're meeting today for both a business meeting and a nomination meeting. We're going to begin by approving our subcommittee assignments, and we'll then move to considering nomination of Representative Deb Haaland to be Secretary of Interior. So approval of the subcommittee assignments need not detain us any longer. We have it now. I think all of you all had to have a breakdown on that. A list of the subcommittee memberships was circulated on Monday. The chairs and ranking members were chosen in accordance with the rules of our respective party conference, and members' assignments reflect members' preferences. So do you wish to add anything on the subcommittee assignment, Senator Barrasso? I'm sorry. Senator Barrasso, do you wish to add anything on the subcommittee assignment?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does any member wish to be heard on the subcommittee assignments? If not, I ask unanimous consent that subcommittee assignments be approved. Is there any objection?
Second.
Second. Hearing none, subcommittee assignments are approved. Do we have enough? Okay. Yeah. Let us now turn to Representative Deb Haaland's nomination to be Secretary of Interior. While I may not personally agree with some of her past statements and policy positions as Secretary, she will be carrying out President Biden's agenda. They made this made very clear. At her hearing, she confirmed that she and the administration recognize that our country will remain dependent on fossil fuels for years to come, and a transition to a cleaner energy future must come through innovation, not elimination. She also affirmed her strong commitment to bipartisanship and the need to work across the aisle to find the bipartisan solutions needed to address the diverse needs of our country. I was deeply impressed by the strong endorsement that she received by Congressman Don Young, for whom I have the utmost respect, and who has been in Congress long enough to be able to read people and know their heart and soul. He testified on the productive working relationship he has had with Representative Haaland and her willingness to work with him on important issues. That meant a lot to me, and I hope it will also resonate with my colleagues here on the committee. The events in January the 6th changed me, as I know it changed most of you, and I feel so incredibly strongly that in today's time, with the deepest divisions running through our country and the halls of Congress, we have to have people who have demonstrated they have the temperament to reach across the aisle. Finally, as a former governor, I understand the importance of having one's own team in place. It is especially important that the President have the department heads he wants, since they make up his cabinet. You won't find any mention of the cabinet in the Constitution. The framers did not provide one. The cabinet was George Washington's idea. It was his way of drawing on the diverse perspectives, experience, and expertise of his department heads to inform his decisions. Washington chose people he could trust and who had experience, knowledge, and expertise different from his own, but he also chose them with a view to represent the different geographical and regional interests of the new nation. Washington wanted his cabinet to encompass the regional diversity of the nation in order to bind together 13 separate states into one nation. President Biden faces a similar challenge. He is in perhaps the most difficult position a modern-day president has been in, bringing us back from the brink after January the 6th. He is trying to bind together a nation split by deep political, racial, social, and economic divisions. Just as I believe that the responsibility falls on every one of us to work together to heal those divisions, he is committed to ushering in a new era of bipartisanship and inclusiveness, and he deserves to have the support of cabinet members he believes can best help him in that task. He is also trying to assemble a cabinet that reflects the rich diversity of our nation, one that looks like America. 230 years after Washington called his first cabinet meeting, it is long past time to give a Native American woman a seat on the cabinet table. For these reasons, I support Deb Haaland's nomination, and I will vote to report her, and I look forward to working with her to protect our public lands and ensure the responsible use of our natural resources in a most bipartisan manner. Let me recognize Senator Barrasso to make his statement at this time. Senator Barrasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, I do want to join you in congratulating the new chairs and ranking members of the subcommittees, Senators Hirono and Hoeven, who will lead the Energy Subcommittee, Senators King and Daines, who will lead the National Parks Subcommittee, Senators Cortez Masto and Lee, the Public Lands, Forest, and Mining Subcommittee, and Senator Wyden and Hyde-Smith of the Water and Power Subcommittee. So congratulations to you all. I look forward to working closely with you. Today, our committee will vote on the nomination of Representative Deb Haaland to be the Secretary of Interior. Before her nomination, Representative Haaland stated that she was, quote, wholeheartedly against fracking and drilling on public lands. She wanted to, quote, keep fossil fuels in the ground, and she pledged to, quote, vote against all new fossil fuel infrastructure. I, along with other Western senators, have consistently opposed nominees who hold such radical views. As a member of Congress, Representative Haaland co-sponsored the Green New Deal. She co-sponsored legislation to disregard the scientific recommendations of the Bush, Obama, and Trump administrations on delisting the grizzly bear from the endangered species list. Representative Haaland's positions are squarely at odds with the mission of the Department of the Interior and outside of the mainstream. During her confirmation hearing, Congresswoman Haaland struggled or refused to answer the basic questions any nominee for the Department of the Interior would be expected to know. She was unwilling or unable to respond to questions about the department, resource policy, and the laws that she would be asked to implement. Senator Risch had to directly ask her 4 times if she supported shutting down the Keystone Pipeline before she said that she did. He then had to ask her multiple times why she thought that was a good idea. There was never a good answer. Her written answers to the questions, for the record, were equally unacceptable. Multiple-part questions from members of this committee received 1 or 2 sentence responses. In one answer, she wouldn't even acknowledge that the United States has higher environmental standards for oil and gas production than Russia or Nigeria. The people of Wyoming deserve straight answers from any potential secretary about the law, the rules, and the regulations that will affect their lives and their livelihoods. They got very few of those. In addition, Representative Haaland seemed unaware of President Biden's policies' destructive impacts, policies that are taking a sledgehammer to Wyoming and other Western states' economies. When asked about the very real impacts that President Biden's policies are having on energy workers across the country, Representative Haaland responded, hopefully their jobs have not been affected. Well, thousands of jobs are being affected. In Wyoming alone, a long-term leasing ban would result in 33,000 workers losing their jobs. Hundreds of thousands of more workers stand to lose their jobs in New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, and other states. I asked her why the administration wouldn't just let energy workers keep their jobs. Representative Haaland had no good answer. American jobs are being sacrificed in the name of the Biden agenda. These policies will have no effect on climate change, but have real-life consequences for thousands and thousands of Americans. Representative Haaland's nomination is historic. If confirmed, she would be the first Native American cabinet secretary. But let me be very clear. Representative Haaland's extreme policy views and lack of substantive answers during the hearing, to me, disqualify her for this job. She's allowed to pursue her Green New Deal-inspired policies at the Department of Interior. She will run Wyoming and other states' economies into the ditch. I cannot support her nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Barrasso. Are there other members wishing to be heard on the nomination of Congresswoman Haaland?
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman.
Senator. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for council.
Please. Counsel?
How long has this committee been in effect in the United States of America as it relates to public lands?
This committee has been in existence since 1977, but our predecessor committee traces its roots back to 1816, when it was one of the first 11 committees that the Senate appointed.
And what was the committee called then?
The Committee on Public Lands.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, my point is this. We had a nominee come before this committee who basically was expressing the views of the President of the United States. Now, as a member of this body, I have voted many times for Republican judge nominees who basically said outlandish things when they were professors or basically maybe even in the private sector in some other capacity. So I don't begrudge any of my colleagues for disagreeing with the policies of the President of the United States, but I was in the room and I heard her answer these questions. And I really felt egreged that people kept pushing her on her answers when she was clear what the president supported. Now, if people don't want to vote for her because they don't believe in the president's views, I respect that. I really do. But I hope that we will realize that she also said she thinks that fossil fuels are going to be around for a while. And I personally believe, for a committee that's been around since 1816, we really do have to ask our questions about what is the use of public lands. Are taxpayers getting a fair deal? What are the impacts of climate on us as a nation? And for somebody whose forest lands are burning up and are trying to come up with new policies, or as simple as saying we need to do something about methane waste and flaring, I just hope that our colleagues will look at these policies after today and move forward on trying to work together. We know that this is a transitioning period for the United States of America. This committee has had many hearings on what that transition looks like, the challenges we face, and I hope we work together. But I'm so proud that we've been around since 1816, not proud that it's taken this long to get someone from Indian country to be nominated and be served in the president's cabinet. This is a historic day, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think colleagues know that this is a pretty significant vote for Alaska, given the outsized role that the Department of Interior plays in my state. You have heard me discuss it many times. And, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to explain the decision that I have come to and my vote this morning. Again, the Department of the Interior and the Secretary really does play a very outsized role in our state. We have more federal lands, more mineral resources, more natural hazards than any other state. We're set apart by very unique laws and the framework that Congress enacted and that presidents have signed, whether it's our Statehood Act, ANCSA, or NILCA. We're an Arctic nation because of Alaska. We're a very diverse state. We've got many, many indigenous peoples and cultures who have lived there since, as they say, time immemorial. We're a state that is just different, and you have heard me say that. I seek to ensure that every nominee who comes before us understands that. I spend a lot of time trying to educate folks about Alaska and our unique needs and our unique peoples. And I spent a considerable amount of time with Representative Haaland reiterating what is at stake for us in Alaska. Our prosperity in Alaska is directly linked to decisions that are made by the Department of Interior, whether through their trust responsibilities, their authority over responsible resource development, or their monitoring of hazards and other threats. I've had 2 separate meetings with Representative Haaland outside of what we had, the time we had with her in the committee. Both of those meetings were over an hour. I sat through and listened to all of her nomination hearing, asked lots of questions, reviewed the answers that she provided to all of us. But I've also spent considerable time listening to Alaskans' views on her nomination. They're paying attention to this nomination, believe me. And I hear 2 things from Alaskans over and over again. The first is that so many Alaskans, Alaskan Natives in particular, are enormously proud to have a Native American nominated to this position. They recognize that this is truly a historic nomination, and in doing so, they believe that Alaska Native issues can be elevated to one of the highest levels of government. The second concern, though, that I'm hearing is that so many are concerned about the agendas that Representative Haaland will seek to implement on her own and on behalf of the White House. They're concerned by her opposition to resource development on public lands, including her opposition to key projects in Alaska and her questioning of the very vital role that Alaska Native corporations serve in our communities. And weighing on top of all this is then my experience from the Obama administration when I voted for a secretary who promised to be a good partner for Alaska, but proved to be anything but after the confirmation. So I have really struggled through this one, how to reconcile an historic nomination with my concerns about an individual's and an administration's conception of what Alaska's future should be. I truly believe that Representative Haaland's heart is there for Native peoples and all who treasure our public lands. I don't believe that is the extent of Interior's mission, but she's also told us that she recognizes that if confirmed, she'll be serving in a different capacity, as Senator Cantwell has mentioned. She told me that she knows she will need to represent every Alaskan, including those who work to responsibly develop our lands. And she committed to me that she will, these are her words, make sure that we're doing all we can to ensure that your constituents have the opportunities that they need. So given the early days of this administration, I do have my doubts that that is going to be the case, but I've decided to support this nomination today, to support the first Native American who will hold this position, and with the expectation that Representative Haaland will be true to her word, not just on matters relating to Native peoples, but also responsible resource development and every other issue. I also fully anticipate that she will have a strong management team in place with people who understand the value of resource development from public lands. She needs this, we need this within the Department of Interior. So I am going to place my trust in Representative Haaland and her team despite some very real misgivings. And I guess I would direct this to Representative Haaland, if you're listening, know that I intend to work with you because I want you to be successful, and quite honestly, we need you to be successful, but I am also going to hold you to your commitments to ensure that Alaska is allowed to prosper. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me the time to present my views this morning.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the senator from Alaska for her pragmatism on this nomination. I am Congresswoman Haaland's constituent, and she represents me in the Congress, and she represents a lot of other people in the Congress. I have been disappointed to hear characterizations that I don't think were either accurate nor appropriate, describing her as a radical, describing her as extreme. I am disappointed by the tenor of the debate in this committee. I voted for 2 Interior nominees whose views may have been considered quite radical by many of my constituents. I never used those terms because we have to get a lot of work done on this committee, and the tenor of this committee over the past several years has been very productive, and we have been able to, despite the fact that many people disagree on these issues. I can tell you that Congresswoman Haaland's views in the Congress quite accurately represent the views of most of my neighbors. But she has always shown an ability to work with people with very different views. And I hope that that is the ethic that we would continue to pursue on this committee. I know that even when she and I have disagreed, that she has always had an open door and an open mind. And I would certainly urge all of my colleagues to support her historic nomination today.
Does any other member wish to speak on this nomination? The question is on reporting favorably the nomination of Debra Haaland to be Secretary of the Interior with a recommendation that the nomination be confirmed. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Manchin.
Aye.
Mr. Wyden. Ms. Cantwell.
Aye.
Mr. Sanders. Mr. Heinrich.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. King. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Kelly. Mr. Hickenlooper. Mr. Barrasso.
No.
Mr. Risch.
No by proxy.
Mr. Lee.
No.
Mr. Daines, Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Hoven, Mr. Langford, Mr. Cassidy,
No by proxy.
Ms. Hyde-Smith, Mr. Marshall, On this vote, the ayes are 11 and the nays are 9.
The nomination is favorably reported. This concludes the business meeting, and now we're going to turn to our hearing this morning. We meet today to consider the nomination of David M. Turk to be the Deputy Secretary of Energy. So I want to welcome to the committee Mr. Turk, and I want to thank you for being here this morning, sir, and for your willingness to serve in this important position. Energy is essential to all of us. We depend on it every minute of every day to heat our homes and offices, to power our factories, to light the darkness, cook our food, fuel our cars, power our cell phones and computers. It is an indispensable fabric of our civilization. It is the Department of Energy's job to see that the people of this country have an adequate and reliable supply of energy at the lowest reasonable cost. The department has many other responsibilities: maintaining our nuclear deterrence, cleaning up Hanford and the Cold War nuclear weapon sites, maintaining our scientific and technological prowess through the national laboratories. But its primary mission, its reason for being, is to promote the general welfare by assuring coordinated and effective administration of federal energy policy and programs. Next to the Secretary, the Deputy Secretary bears the principal responsibility for this task. The Deputy Secretary is the second highest ranking officer in the department and the department's chief operating officer. The Deputy must be prepared to act for the Secretary and perform all of the Secretary's functions and duties in the Secretary's absence, and to manage the department's wide-ranging mission and the budget of over $35 billion. Mr. Turk, I'm convinced that you are up to the job. You know the energy issues. You have spent the last 4 years in senior positions at the International Energy Agency and the past 14 months as the agency's Deputy Executive Director. The Executive Director of the IEA is Dr. Faith Birol, who is well known to this committee and highly regarded by members on both sides of the aisle. Mr. Turk has been Mr. Birol's deputy. He knows the Department of Energy. Before joining the IEA, he spent 2 years as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Climate and Technology at the Department of Energy. Before that, he was a Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Department of State and a Special Assistant to the President at the National Security Council. And he knows Congress. He got his start working for Senator Conrad, who we will hear from in a moment, then served as counsel to then Senator Biden on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and later as staff director for the House Subcommittee on National Security and Foreign Affairs. He has spent the past 20 years serving in important jobs that have given him the technical knowledge and the practical experience in energy, national security, and management that he will need to help Secretary Granholm lead the Department of Energy. I think he is supremely well qualified, and I hereby support his nomination. I will now recognize Senator Barrasso to make his opening statement. Senator Barrasso.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I also want to welcome David Turk to join us today at the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Congratulations on the nomination. Thank you for spending time with me yesterday, and it was a very productive discussion, and I appreciated that. Our nation's energy production benefits every American, as we discussed yesterday. American energy keeps the lights on for our schools, our businesses, and our homes. It powers our cars, our buses, our trucks, our ships, our airplanes, and our trains. Whether it's coal, oil, natural gas, uranium, water, sun, or wind, the energy resources we use to generate power provide the backbone for our economy. Over the decades, our nation has made great progress in improving the environmental and economic performance of all of these energy resources, and we must never rest on our laurels. We must always continue to harness American ingenuity, investment, and innovation to make our use of these energy resources even cleaner and more cost-effective and efficient for the American people. So last Congress, I, along with my Democrat and Republican colleagues, worked together to enact a law that promotes carbon capture technologies, provides for more efficient diesel engines, and prevents greenhouse gas emissions from air conditioners. This was the most significant climate change law to pass Congress in years, and it's going to pay significant dividends for the environment. So I look forward to working with Chairman Manchin, the members of this committee, and the Department of Energy to build on this record of bipartisanship. If confirmed as Deputy Secretary of Energy, Mr. Turk is going to play a critical role in our nation's energy agenda. His experience in energy policy is extensive, and it includes leadership positions at the International Energy Agency in Paris, the U.S. Department of Energy, the U.S. Department of State, and the National Security Council. During his career, Mr. Turk has worked to support the development of innovative energy technologies. He has specifically spoken publicly about the need for carbon capture technologies. So I hope to hear more from Mr. Turk today about his support for developing innovative energy technologies, including carbon capture technologies. We also want to hear from him on how the Biden administration can promote American energy exports instead of just stifling domestic production. Much of our nation's energy comes from Wyoming, which is America's leading energy producer. It has among the largest reserves of energy resources in the country, produces 15 times more energy than it consumes, and is the biggest net energy supplier among all 50 states. Energy production is the economic lifeblood of Wyoming. It creates good-paying jobs, provides a critical source of revenue to state and to local governments. So I look forward to hearing how Mr. Turk will prioritize policies that take advantage of the enormous energy, economic, and national security benefits generated by our abundant fossil fuel resources. All too often, international climate efforts, such as the Paris Climate Agreement, are designed to give other countries an advantage over ours. This agreement gave countries like China, Russia, Iran a competitive advantage over America with little to no environmental benefit. If confirmed, the Department, as Deputy Secretary of Energy, Mr. Turk must prioritize policies that are directly associated and focused on helping Americans. This is going to include energy production from coal, oil, natural gas, and uranium. The Biden administration has already declared war on American energy and American energy workers. Its policies make the United States and our allies more vulnerable to China, also to Russia, also to OPEC nations. So I'm not going to sit idly by while an administration enforces policies that threaten my home state's economy and the livelihoods of so many people in my state and across the country. Bottom line is the United States will need fossil fuels well into the future. Coal, oil, and natural gas are not going away, and America should not leave these assets stranded in the ground. If confirmed as Deputy Secretary of Energy, Mr. Turk must ensure that he and his colleagues at the Department recognize this reality. So again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling the hearing. I do look forward to Mr. Turk's testimony and having an opportunity to further explore and discuss the issues with the nominee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. At this point, I'll recognize Senator Van Hollen to introduce Mr. Turk to the committee. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Manchin and Ranking Member Barrasso, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce to you the President's nominee to be Deputy Secretary of Energy, Mr. David Turk. While Mr. Turk was born in South America and raised in Illinois, I think I can speak for all my fellow Marylanders when we're proud to claim him, his wife Emily, and 3 children as Marylanders. As you've heard from the Chairman's introduction and biography, Mr. Turk has a wide range of experience directly relevant and important to this position. And I highly recommend him to you as the next Deputy Secretary. I've also had the privilege of getting to know Dave personally over the years. I first met Dave more than a dozen years ago when he served as the staff director of the National Security Oversight Subcommittee in the House of Representatives. He worked diligently with both sides of the aisle I had a chance to travel with him on official CODELs and participate in hearings organized by the subcommittee. And throughout that period, he showed a seriousness of purpose and a focus on key national security issues and recognized the importance of working with our allies to pursue our national security interests. I always found him to be well organized, diligent, and responsive to members on the committee from both sides of the aisle. His national security experience is going to be very important in this job. As you indicated, Mr. Chairman, a big part of the Department of Energy portfolio is overseeing our nuclear weapons arsenal, advancing our nuclear nonproliferation goals, and promoting international nuclear safety. And Mr. Turk's experience in the House and elsewhere will serve him very well for this mission. Beyond his experience in the House, Mr. Turk had a number of other positions that are directly relevant to this position. We're going to be hearing from Senator Conrad, and I want to thank the Senator for his great service and for being here today to speak on behalf of David Turk. Mr. Turk also served on the Judiciary Committee for then Senator Joe Biden. Beyond Capitol Hill, he had posts in the White House as the White House National Security Council and at the State Department, and as you indicated, Mr. Chairman, at the Department of Energy, where he served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Climate and Technology. Most recently, he has channeled his skills toward helping governments, industry, and communities across the world make informed 21st century energy choices in his capacity at the International Energy Agency. He has worn many hats during his 5-year tenure there, most recently as Deputy Executive Director. And that position has given him literally a global vantage point with respect to the challenges of energy and, of course, of climate change. As a co-sponsor of Senator Barrasso's legislation that he mentioned with respect to carbon sequestration and other measures to reduce emissions from greenhouse gases, I can assure members that Mr. Turk will work closely with us on that agenda. And in fact, while his resume indicates that he has spent his career in various capacities here in our nation's capital, and of course, in his most recent post overseas, Dave grew up in a town in Illinois, Rock Falls, and I know from my many interactions with him that he has never forgotten those small town roots. And in this job at the Department of Energy is always going to be focused on working Americans, no matter where they live in the United States of America, East Coast, West Coast, and all points in between, plus Alaska and Hawaii. So to Mr. Chairman, ranking members, Ranking Member Barrasso, members of the committee, I strongly urge you to support the nomination of David Turk.
Thank you, Senator Van Haaland. And now I want to recognize our former colleague, Senator Conrad, to introduce Mr. Turk. Senator Conrad represented North Dakota in the Senate from 1987 to 2013 and served as either chairman or ranking member of the Budget Committee for 12 years. Perhaps more to the point this morning, he was a member of this committee from 1987 to 1993, and he played a major role in enacting the landmark Energy Policy Act of 1992. So, Senator Conrad, we are truly honored and pleased to welcome you back to the committee this morning. And I want to assure you that your years of hard work trying to balance the budget and your example of bipartisanship have not been forgotten. Senator Conrad.
Thank you, Chairman Manchin. Very kind words. I appreciate it. And I look back on my time with you and Ranking Member Barrasso. Good to see you.
We always like Lucy
Senator
better than you.
That's always been my experience in life. So good to see you all. I did love serving on the Energy Committee. You know, they made me leave when I went to the Finance Committee, or I would have stayed for my entire time, because I truly loved serving on the Energy Committee. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, for this opportunity to introduce David Turk, who, as you know, has been nominated to be Deputy Secretary of Energy. Dave worked with me for 3 years, actually more than 3 years, as legislative assistant and as my counsel. I can tell you he did a superb job. I very much enjoyed working with Dave, as did all of our staff and everybody that worked with him. He's the kind of person you want in a position of responsibility. Senator Van Haaland mentioned that Dave grew up in a small town in Illinois, and he has those small town Midwestern values. Dave Turk is honest, he is hardworking, he is somebody that works well with others and appreciates the fundamental need to get things done. That is really what drives Dave Turk and motivates him, is to get things accomplished to improve the lives of the people that he works for. And he knows in this position he is working for the people of the United States. Because of his long service in Congress, he also appreciates that Congress is the Article 1 branch of our government. He understands the critical role it plays in our constitutional structure, and he learned full well the importance of working together, of working with others. I can tell you, if he is confirmed, he will be laser focused on improving the lives of the people of this country. That will be his focus. He will also be results oriented. One of the things I can say about Dave in working with me is, if you wanted a job to get done, give it to Dave Turk, because the job is going to get done, and it's going to get done well. Finally, let me just say, Dave is also a very good basketball player, and I found that that makes a big difference in life, especially if you can rebound. So let me just say to my colleagues, my former colleagues, I urge you to vote for the confirmation of Dave Turk. I urge you to do it quickly. You will never be disappointed. You will enjoy working with this man, and you will appreciate the attitude he brings to his work. Thank you so much. It's good to see you all again.
Thank you, Senator Conrad. It's good to see you and hear from you, also, as always. The rules of the committee, which apply to all nominees, require that they be sworn in connection with their testimony. So, Mr. Turk, if you please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give to the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated, sir. Before you begin your statement, I will ask 3 questions addressed to each nominee before this committee. Will you be available to appear before this committee and other congressional committees to represent departmental positions and respond to issues of concern to the Congress?
I will.
Are you aware of any personal holdings, investments, or interest that could constitute a conflict of interest or create the appearance of such a conflict should you be confirmed and assume the office to which you have been nominated by the President?
No.
Are you involved, or do you have any assets held in a blind trust?
No.
You are now recognized to make your statement, so you can proceed. Thank you.
Chairman Manchin, Ranking Member Barrasso, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. Let me also thank Senators Van Haaland and Conrad, not only for their incredibly kind introductory remarks, but more importantly for their remarkable years of public service. It is a distinct honor to be before a committee with such a proven record of bipartisan accomplishments. Let me congratulate all those involved in the groundbreaking Energy Act of 2020 in particular, especially then Chairman Murkowski, then Ranking Member Manchin, and all the senators who were involved in that extraordinary effort. Last year also saw passage of Senator Barrasso's HFC bill that he mentioned, one of the most important pieces of climate legislation in recent years. To introduce myself, I thought I'd focus on 5 key formative experiences in my life that should I be honored enough to be confirmed, I would take with me as Deputy Secretary of Energy. First, as has already been mentioned, I grew up in a small Rust Belt town that I suspect most of you have never heard of, Rock Falls, Illinois. Throughout my childhood, the mill, which is what we referred to simply as the largest employer, laid off more and more workers each year of my childhood. Through no fault of their own, steady paychecks were no longer steady, families were thrown into disarray, and the entire community was left to fend for itself. Second, in high school, I was selected to represent my home state of Illinois at a DOE summer program at Brookhaven National Lab. From this very first experience, I could tell that DOE was a very special organization. And this first impression was only reinforced when I became a full-time department employee. Third, my first job, as was been mentioned, was working in DC for Senator Kent Conrad, who instilled in all of us on his team a laser-like focus to help his fellow North Dakotans. Through that experience, I learned how passionate public service can make a real difference in real people's lives. Fourth, I had the privilege to serve as a special assistant to the President on the National Security Council. My role was to coordinate national security issues between the Congress and all of the agencies of the executive branch. I learned that America is always stronger when Article 1 and Article 2 can work together. And fifth, and most recently, I've served as Deputy Executive Director of the International Energy Agency under a visionary leader in Dr. Fatih Birol. If confirmed, I very much look forward to being deputy to another visionary leader in Secretary Granholm. I learned that a successful deputy needs to put ego aside to support the leader, to lift up all others, and to follow through. If confirmed, I would bring all of these experiences to the job of Deputy Secretary of Energy. The expansive portfolio of DOE and its 110,000 employees can at first look a bit like a Frankenstein's monster. But upon closer inspection, I would argue there's a clear thread throughout. DOE, put simply, is where our country turns for solutions to our country's toughest problems. Let me elaborate on what I mean of this critical role of DOE as America's catalyst for solutions. The department must maintain a safe, secure, reliable nuclear stockpile, prevent nuclear weapons proliferation, clean up waste from our nuclear weapons programs of the past. The department has been and must remain the scientific powerhouse not only of the country, but of the world. The department must be an indispensable solutions catalyst to defeat climate change, one of the most daunting challenges ever facing humanity. DOE must help catalyze a full range of clean energy, affordable, resilient technologies for us to be able to reach net zero emissions in just a few short decades. And the department needs to be laser focused like never before to help communities in transition. We must ensure we don't leave towns like Rock Falls, Illinois, alone without real-world opportunities and a fair chance to succeed. I firmly believe that the greatest country in the history of the world can solve climate change, build back better, outcompete others, and leave no workers and no communities behind. And we must do all of these urgently and at the same time. If confirmed, I look forward to partnering with each of you as you serve your constituents and your communities. For the department to be successful, it needs the type of bipartisan leadership, partnership that you all have shown in the Energy Act of 2020. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to appear before you today. I very much look forward to your questions and to do everything I can to help.
Thank you, sir. I'll start the questioning, and my first question will be, the United States became a net total energy exporter in 2019. That means we were energy independent for the first time in 67 years, in large part due to the surge of domestic oil and gas production. Do you believe it is in our best interest to maintain our energy independence?
Yes.
I believe that we must meet the climate challenge with innovation, not elimination. I say that in recognition that we must reduce emissions in all sectors of the economy, domestically, but also around the world. I've said this many times, this is global climate. It's not North American climate or United States climate. And I also believe it's in paramount importance that we maintain our energy independence. We can continue to develop innovative solutions that will reduce our carbon emissions and get us to net zero by 2050 while taking advantage of all the energy resources that we have at our disposal. So do you agree on the all-above energy strategy for our country, and also that we can do it with the investments in technology?
Well, as we had a chance to talk, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for talking with me before the hearing and so many other senators on this committee, having worked at the International Energy Agency and elsewhere, I'm a firm believer, as you said very eloquently in your opening statements, that energy is good. Energy is what powers our community. It provides livelihoods for Americans across the country. It's emissions that are the challenge. So we need to promote energy. We need to promote energy, just as you said, and we also need to focus on emissions. And this is where technologies like CCUS, Ranking Member Barrasso mentioned, others will mentioned as well. We need to have that full assortment of tools in the tool belt on energy.
Well, also, when you put your energy budget together, I'm working with Secretary Granholm, when you put the budget together, will you commit to basically the $35 billion that we had in the Energy Act last year for technology, so we can innovate the new technologies and find the new technologies that will be able to use all of the above, all of our fossil, in the most cleaner way to meet these emissions?
Well, absolutely, and again, congratulations to you, Senator Murkowski, all involved in the Energy Act of 2020, which provides a terrific roadmap for what the department should be focusing on a wide range of technologies and sectors when it comes to energy. And I'm a firm believer, as you are, Mr. Chairman, on innovation. I've spent much of my career focused on innovation, the power of innovation to really have solutions for these challenges that face our country.
Your background working at the U.S. State Department and Department of Energy, as well as the IEA, has given you an important perspective on the United States' role in energy and technology markets worldwide. In recent months, China has announced increasing ambition on addressing its greenhouse gas emissions, and data show that its energy investments across technologies are significant. President Biden has already signaled his interest in reclaiming U.S. leadership on the global climate stage, but existing competition in markets and our reliance on foreign supply chains, I repeat that, on foreign supply chains, may be our biggest obstacle to meeting our desires. How do you see the Department of Energy playing a role to boost U.S. competitiveness and leadership on providing climate solutions to a global energy market?
Well, I completely agree with you, Mr. Chairman. The U.S. Is a leader in the world, needs to be a leader, needs to be the leader in the world, including when it comes to the technologies of the future. And we need to approach other countries, whether it's China or others, with our eyes wide open, with a very pragmatic streak, and look for promoting the U.S. interest of companies, communities. One issue in particular, and I hope we talk about it further today, is critical minerals. Critical minerals are important now, will be even more important into the future as well. And we need to get our act together as a U.S. government, working Article 1, Article 2, to make sure we have a full supply chain of critical minerals, the jobs associated with it, the national security benefits that flow from it as well.
That's great. I have one final question. I think we can all agree that the national labs are the department's crown jewels, and I'm so proud to have the National Energy Technology Lab in Morgantown, West Virginia. This is really personal to me, but NETL is unique among the labs in that it is the only government-owned, government-operated lab. As a result, it lacks some of the flexibility that some of the other labs enjoy, such as control over its own hiring. And right now, I understand there are more than 30 vacancies awaiting secretarial approval to fill at NETL. Will you turn your attention to getting these hires approved at NETL? Will you work with me to ensure NETL has the authority over its human resources needed to put it on a level footing, a level playing field with the other 16 labs?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. NETL is one of the crown jewels of our crown jewels in our national lab system. It's incredibly important. And as if I'm confirmed as the Deputy Secretary of Energy, my job as the COO of the agency is to make sure the trains run on time. We're supporting the incredibly passionate gifted folks at Nettle and our other national labs. So I would absolutely love to work with you, work with your staff to make sure Nettle has all the full authorities and tools that it needs.
Well, if we can look at the hiring situation they have and the positions that have been unfilled for far too long, I'd appreciate that. Senator Barrasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just a couple of short questions. It's a series of them. I asked them previously to Secretary Granholm, and the U.S. is the world's largest oil and natural gas producer. On balance, good thing or bad thing?
Good thing.
The U.S. has, if not the lowest, then among the lowest energy prices in the industrialized world. On balance, good thing or bad thing?
Good thing.
Jobs in oil, natural gas, coal sector pay well above the national average. On balance, good thing or bad thing?
Jobs are good. Absolutely.
Oil, gas, coal production generates on an annual basis billions of dollars for states, for tribes, and for the federal government. On balance, good thing or bad thing?
Good thing for those states to have that funding.
Largely because of hydraulic fracturing, U.S. emissions are at the lowest level since the early 1990s. On balance, good thing or bad thing?
As I mentioned, energy is good, emissions are bad. Whatever we can do to drive down emissions is a positive thing.
U.S. exports of oil and natural gas have enabled our allies to reduce their reliance on imports from our adversaries. On balance, good thing or bad thing?
Good thing.
Thank you. So, at her nominating hearing, I asked Secretary Granholm how a ban on oil and gas leasing is consistent with President Biden's goal of unifying our country, putting Americans back to work, helping the economy grow. You know, she said that the President's plan on building back better would create more jobs in clean energy than the jobs that might be sacrificed. So I focus on the word sacrificed. Do you believe that the jobs of American oil and gas workers need to be sacrificed?
So we need to focus on jobs, as I said in my opening statement, with a laser focused. And we are in the middle of an energy transition going on, not only in Wyoming, but states, not only in our country, but in our world. And this is not going to be easy. It's going to require focus day in and day out with a sense of urgency to not only have the jobs our communities need today, but to have the jobs for decades to come as well.
So do you believe that each of these workers whose job may be sacrificed as a consequence of these policies were going to be able to regain employment at or above their previous salary and benefits and be able to remain in their communities? Because you talked about your own experience in Illinois.
Well, absolutely. And having grown up in a small town, a Rust Belt town, I saw what job losses meant, not only for the people whose paychecks were lost, but the families and the communities and the business that depended on that funding. And I think it's not only a responsibility of government from a practical perspective, but I think it's a moral responsibility to work with communities across the country and make sure that we have the opportunities and the fair chance that all Americans deserve. Again, this is not going to be easy. I don't think there's any quick fixes here. I think this is going to require an awful lot of work and hopefully collaboration between Congress and the executive branch.
You know, on his first day in office, President Biden revoked the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline. As a result, 1,000 workers lost their jobs. About 10,000 future jobs that would have been created to finish the pipeline ended up getting canceled. Last month, President Biden failed to impose sanctions on any additional companies building the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. You've been spending time in Europe. You know that that's the pipeline that's going to carry energy from Russia to Europe. It's a natural gas pipeline that's going to enable Russia to gain a position of dominance on a number of our allies in Europe. And it's going to ensure the Russian workers keep their jobs. So yesterday, 40 senators, 40 of us, sent a letter urging President Biden to impose sanctions on entities involved with Nord Stream 2. So, Mr. Turk, why is President Biden favoring Russian workers, Russian energy over American workers and American energy when it comes to pipelines?
Well, I think what we need to be focused on is, as you mentioned, Ranking Member Barrasso, real-world jobs, not just the eye in the sky thinking, pie in the sky thinking. And especially for pipeline workers, we can build CO2 pipelines. I had a terrific conversation with Senator Hoeven about some interesting efforts to bring some ethanol plants in the Midwest and pipe up that CO2 to North Dakota. There's an opportunity there. There's huge opportunities on CCUS if we can work together and really go to scale on CCUS, or hydrogen, or critical minerals, a lot of other particular opportunities from a jobs front across the spectrum.
Yeah, I just think that the sad fact is that President Biden's oil and gas leasing ban in the United States cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline, and his failure at the same time to sanction entities involved in the Nord Stream 2 pipeline all add up to an energy policy that seems to favor Russia over the United States. Let me go, last question on liquefied natural gas, since you just raised that. Last June, before this committee, you were here to testify, and you said U.S. liquefied natural gas continues to play a unique role in enhancing market efficiency and supply security all around the world. Can you expand upon your comments for the committee?
Well, certainly if I'm confirmed, I understand the jurisdiction of the Department of Energy under the Natural Gas Act to examine gas export applications under the public interest determination. Those are specific determinations for specific LNG export applications, and I would certainly look to apply that under the law as given. I also think we need to focus very much, and I know members of this committee have focused on this, on methane emissions in natural gas. We've got to do a better job in the U.S., and we've got to help and work with and pressure other countries, Russia and others, to really get their acts together on methane emissions.
So you do see the political benefits from exporting American liquefied natural gas to our allies across the world?
So we're a democracy. We're a leader of the free world. We are the leader of the free world. I think it's a much better outcome for Japan or others to get their energy supplies from the U.S. than to get it from Russia or other countries.
Thank you, Mr. Turk.
Thank you. Senator Wyden.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Last year, Mr. Turk, wildfires hit Oregon like a wrecking ball. And just last month, a winter storm left thousands of Oregonians with no power. I have legislation to drive power companies to increase their efforts to make their utility lines more resistant to these major weather events by increasing activities like undergrounding power lines, reinforcing utility poles, and clearing away brush. This is important to do so that power companies can do more and these costs don't come at the expense of rural ratepayers. If you're confirmed, will you commit to work with me to move this legislation forward and make our power grid more resilient?
I think we've seen not only in Oregon and out west, we've seen in Texas, we've seen in other parts of the country, the importance of resilience of our grids. It's something that we need to work at. If I'm confirmed, I look forward to working with our terrific colleagues in the Department of Energy, the national labs with experience here, to do exactly as you suggest, Senator.
And one other question, if I might, with respect to clean energy jobs and technology, and both of them, and I've enjoyed talking with you, Mr. Turk, both grid resilience and clean energy jobs and technology is going to take bringing science-based decision-making back to the Department of Energy. I believe you're going to do that with Secretary Granholm, and that's why I'm going to be supporting your nomination. Now, in addition to grid resilience, we talked about clean energy and how it and climate change, addressing climate change, go hand in hand. And together, if you do them right, you create high skill, high wage, clean energy jobs. Now, the Department of Energy, with its research and vast array of technologies, is poised to not only lower emissions, but to mobilize a workforce as well. Tell us a little bit about how you would use these new technologies to create new clean energy jobs.
Well, thank you, Senator, and thank you for spending some time talking with me, not only on basketball, which is a passion we both share, but more generally.
Blazers won last night.
Good. Just a few thoughts responding to your questions. First, on science-based decision-making. I've worked in a variety of different jobs throughout my career, national security, energy, et cetera. And one thing from the International Energy Agency, my most recent, my current employer, it is a data-driven organization. The challenges that we face in the U.S. on energy, on climate change, are too important not to base our decision-making on solid facts, on solid data, on solid analysis. So I completely agree with that point. And then secondly, we are in the midst of a clean energy revolution. It's incredibly exciting to see the price points and where they've come on solar, on wind, on a range of clean energy technologies. We need a wide array of energy technologies, and the jobs associated with those clean energy technologies, if we're smart, and this is not going to be something that's easy or going to happen overnight, we're going to have to work at it day in and day out, but it's something I'm particularly eager for if I'm confirmed to be the Deputy Secretary of Energy.
Well, there are a variety of paths for getting there. As you know, and we talked about, there are 44 separate tax breaks for energy, and many of those breaks date back to yesteryear, and I've got an effort to collapse those 44 into 3. And so there are a variety of strategies we're going to want to work with you and Secretary Granholm on. I've got a little bit of time left, but I want to shift to another hat that I wear on the Intelligence Committee, and that is the need to address the challenge of cybersecurity. I think we saw it again, really just a matter of weeks ago, what some of the challenges are with countries who certainly do not always wish us well. So tell us, if you would, about some of your priorities. What are the couple of things you want to work on in the cybersecurity area right out of the gate?
Well, thank you, first of all, for your chairmanship of the Finance Committee, which is incredibly important on all sorts of issues, but especially on the tax incentives or others kinds of incentives that the Finance Committee has jurisdiction in. I know the 48C piece of legislation on manufacturing incentives was introduced recently by Chairman Manchin, Senator Stabenow. That's another exciting tool in the tool belt, if I could. Completely agree with you, Senator, on cybersecurity. It's a challenge for us today, and it's going to be an increasing challenge for us in the coming days, weeks, and months as well. It's an issue I've focused on in a variety of different previous experiences. I think it's something that we need to look by building grid resiliency in by design. This is something that there's a very important technology component to it, but it's a very important procedures and practice perspective, not only from the federal government, but working with private utilities, companies, so that everybody builds digital resilience in. There are going to be attacks. There are attacks on a daily basis, on an hourly basis to our grids. We've just got to get ahead of the curve as much as we possibly can. And the Department of Energy has some terrific capabilities, including in the national labs, to work with the Department of Homeland Security, the White House, and others to be a part of the solution here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for being with us, sir, and for your willingness to serve if confirmed. I'm going to switch microphones. This one's not working well. In some parts of the world, including many parts of Asia, coal generally, and a type of coal that burns dirtier than what much of what we produce in Utah and in other parts of the United States, still makes up an overwhelming majority of the energy mix. In light of the fact that they're burning a lot of that to make energy in Asia, do you think that in order to bring down emissions in the short to mid-term, that we're going to need to continue to export LNG and, in some instances, cleaner burning coals like those we have in Utah?
Well, thank you, Senator, for the question. And as I've mentioned, I'm a firm believer that energy is good. It's emissions that we really have to focus on. And CCUS is a technology, other potential solutions as well. I look forward, if I'm confirmed, to working with you, working with other senators who are interested in those technologies to try to really bring them to scale. We've only had the tip of the iceberg on CCUS technologies. We really need to get going with that.
Yeah, what about LNG, though? On the LNG component, though, it would be better, I would imagine, for the environment if there were countries that are still relying primarily on coal for generating electric power to start burning natural gas rather than coal, particularly the dirtier coal, wouldn't it?
So under the Natural Gas Act, the Department of Energy needs to make a national interest determination if it's for gas, LNG, going to a non-free trade association country. And one of the things that should be taken into account along with a lot of other things, is what is that gas displacing or substituting for where that gas is going? If it's going to countries, Caribbean countries, others where it's diesel or where it's coal, then you would have a net positive in terms of the climate benefit on that. But it's a very particularized determination.
Right. I guess I'm just trying to understand in that circumstance, if that's what we would be replacing, why wouldn't we want to export it? If there's demand for a U.S. product and that U.S. product would be better for the environment, what would be the downside of allowing it to be exported?
So again, it's looking at each application, the particular circumstances of that application. If I'm confirmed, I would certainly be part of that effort, trying to look at it in that particular circumstance.
No, I get that. I'm just trying to imagine what that circumstance might be. If you looked at one and said, no, this isn't going to go, what sort of circumstance might get you there?
Well, again, I've not been confirmed yet. I hope I would have the support of this committee and senators to take into that job. And I think we need to see the particular circumstances. I certainly wouldn't want to prejudge any particular circumstances coming before the department.
Do you support an administrative moratorium on oil and gas leasing on federal lands?
So this is a Department of Interior jurisdiction. I understand it's a pause. It's on federal lands. It's not on state and local lands. And it doesn't impact current leases, and there are a backlog of those leases going on as well. So from the Department of Energy perspective, I think we're a solutions catalyst. I think it's a phenomenal department I hope to be a part of again, and I think the Department of Energy role here is to try to promote technology solutions, to try to use its levers so that we have a full swath of clean energy technology. We have a full swath of job opportunities, whether it's critical minerals, CCUS, hydrogen, full range of opportunities.
Okay, on that topic of the full range of opportunities, one of President Biden's objectives is renewable energy, and a lot of his objectives for renewable energy are going to require mineral access and mineral production. Do you support the domestic extraction and production of minerals?
So I think critical minerals is a huge opportunity space for the U.S. To get out and improve our national security, because we're relying too much on some of those national critical minerals from countries, China, the Congo, et cetera. An average electric vehicle uses 5 times the critical minerals as an internal combustion engine.
Right.
So critical minerals even more important. So I think we need to work on the full supply chain, sustainable mining.
Insofar as you need those minerals, and those minerals have got to come from somewhere, I think it is safe to say that the United States has better environmental restrictions in place than many, perhaps most, in some cases all, of the other countries from which we could obtain them. Seems to me that it'd be better to get those here, given that it's done in a much more environmentally responsible fashion here. Do you disagree with that?
So I think there's a very compelling national security case. There's a compelling jobs case. Of course, there are other agencies, other departments that will be making decisions on this issue. The Department of Energy is part of the table entering into those discussions. And if I'm confirmed, I look forward to doing what we can from the department to have, as Secretary Granholm so eloquently has put it, have a real plan on critical minerals all the way through the supply chain and be very aggressive about that. And very much look forward to working with you, Senator, on that and others who are interested in that issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Mr. Turk, congratulations on your nomination. I wanted to go over a few very important issues for us at the state of Washington, particularly at Hanford. There's been some changes in how the defense contracts work, particularly with subcontractors. And so one of the goals I think we have is to have a more efficient and effective regime. So in the long term, I think it'll probably be a positive thing. But in the short term, we are seeing some loss of small businesses because of this. So will you commit to work with us on these issues to make sure that during this time of pandemic, we're not losing a core infrastructure? The whole reason why this is important is nobody wants this to be all about big crime contractors. People want other small businesses in the Tri-Cities to get part of the defense contracts. So if the change we're making is about more efficiency, but in the end, we get rid of this layer of small businesses and they're not there to do the subcontracting work, it's not going to be a positive result. So will you work with us to ensure a smoother implementation and to help the small business infrastructure of the Tri-Cities.
Well, absolutely, Senator Cantwell, and thank you for your years of focus on what is the largest cleanup site and incredibly complicated in the DOE's jurisdiction. I know it's a priority for you. It will be a priority for me if I'm confirmed as
Great.
Deputy Secretary.
Great.
And the
Can
particular,
I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, sorry.
No, no worries.
Are you committed to proposing funding for Hanford that aligns with the tri-party agreement milestones, and do you commit to meeting all the tri-party agreement milestones?
I know there's been a lot of frustration with the previous administration to lowball their funding requests here in a way that's not helpful for the process. And I'd certainly look forward to working with Secretary Granholm to make sure that we have the kind of funding, the kind of budgeting to be helpful. And just on your particular circumstances in Hanford, I wanted to get to that. Absolutely look forward to working with you on that.
Right, thank you. And then on Hammer, which is a workforce continuum of opportunity to train and skill the workers on the safety and security they need to do this job, do you support the Hanford Hammer Center?
Well, we need to have our workers safe. We need to have the skills. We need to have the small businesses taken care of, just as you mentioned. So, yes.
Okay, so on, thank you for mentioning the 2020 bill, and I thank my colleague for helping get the grid modernization as part of that. One of the reasons, I think nobody here in the committee would be surprised to know that we've had vulnerabilities to our grid. We've all been trying to focus on it, but certainly the big storm that hit the United States, Uri, that had impacts not just in Texas, but in the upper Midwest, caused a lot of problems. I mean, the storm caused rolling blackouts. Everybody's hearing the stories about Texas, but the Midwest Mid-Continental Independent System Operator had problems, and so did the Southwest Power Pool region. So these are issues that people are starting to say. I think the damage from Uri is something like $100 billion. So one of the things we need to discuss is more resiliency and more effectiveness of our grid. There are people that think that we can invest more in transmission and connectivity to help decarbonize, but also reliability and address the risks of cyber security that my colleague from Oregon was also bringing up. So do we need to make do you agree with reports that upgrading the transmission capacity, adding new capacity, helps us by both decarbonizing and actually helping lower electricity costs?
Absolutely. The investments we need to make in the grid, and thank you for your leadership on this issue for many, many years, are absolutely critical to achieve our climate change objectives, to achieve our resiliency of our grids, and to make sure that the power stays on even in times of challenge. We need to do better.
So what would you do as deputy to help elevate this issue?
So we've got phenomenal talents at the Department of Energy, not only at headquarters, but throughout the national labs, whether it's PNNL that you know very well, or NREL or others. And we need to take that work. We need to work with our interagency colleagues. We need to work with the Congress and really come up with a much more robust game plan for how we deal with these issues. So I look very forward to working with you on that issue.
Great. Well, I definitely think we need to make more investments. We're going to have another round of discussion on infrastructure. I definitely plan on proposing more investments in the grid as part of that infrastructure goals for the United States. I think Senator Daines is next.
Thank you, Chairman Cantwell. Mr. Turk, thanks for being here today. Thanks for your willingness to serve. I'd like to invite you out to Montana to see firsthand the many issues that we are talking about today and to follow up on the conversation we had prior to this hearing. I know you've traveled a lot in your life, but I believe there's no place like Montana, that we've got rich natural resources, we have a diverse energy portfolio, and I think we've struck a good balance between natural resource jobs, what that does to our economy and our tax base, as well as conservation. But I'd like to start by focusing first on critical minerals, following up on some of the questions Senator Lee asked earlier. Domestic critical mineral production creates high-paying jobs in Montana. It helps bolster our rural communities who are really struggling across our state. And importantly, as you mentioned, it strengthens U.S. national security. But I believe there is a disconnect between the discussions that we are having about expanding renewable energy production and how we source the raw materials we'll need to build out these new energy facilities. It takes raw materials. It takes raw materials that are mined from the earth. And there's a movement afoot that wants to keep everything in the ground. coal, natural gas, oil, as well as all minerals. And I think that's a dangerous ideology as we think about the future for our country. If the Biden administration is serious about expanding renewable energy, protecting the environment, increasing good, high-paying jobs, and protecting our national security, then it should be serious about expanding domestic mineral production. Mr. Turk, you spent years working on international and national security issues. Do you share my concerns with the mineral supply chain as it relates to renewable energy?
So the short answer is absolutely, and thank you for the time that you made to have a conversation with me earlier. I have to say I'm incredibly jealous that you get to go to Montana on a regular basis. It's an incredibly special place. I'd be happy to come out there and visit with you and your constituents. And I couldn't agree with you more on the importance of critical minerals. It's not only an opportunity, as you said, for jobs, for well-paying jobs throughout the supply chain, but I think it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility from a national security perspective.
One of the questions I had during the nomination of now Secretary Grenholm was she agreed that it was important to promote responsible domestic mineral production for renewable energy. Would you find agreement with her thoughts there?
So as hopefully my new boss, I will agree with everything that she says publicly, of course. And on this, I certainly agree with her on that. And I would look forward, if I'm confirmed, to have the DOE and the labs focus their solutions catalyst powers to try to make sure that we can do the mining as environmentally friendly, as responsible as it possibly can, so that we can have the whole chain on critical.
And when you think about DOE, what role do you think they should play in securing the critical mineral supply chain?
So I think DOE can have a huge role. The clean energy technologies of the future, the electric vehicles, as I mentioned, 5 times the amount of critical minerals. There's a lot of analysis that we can do. There's a lot of innovation that needs to take place throughout the supply chains to reduce costs and to make sure that these critical minerals are available as cheaply, as environmentally responsible as they can play. So I think DOE has a number of roles, important roles, in working with other important departments, of course.
You know, it was just last Congress, in fact, Chairman Manchin, myself, others on this committee were successful in getting the REACT legislation signed into law. This bill directs DOE to help develop methods of extracting the rare earth elements actually from coal. If confirmed, will you prioritize this new bipartisan program?
Well, congratulations on that particular piece of legislation, and would, if I'm confirmed, absolutely look forward to working with you and your staff on that.
I want to shift gears and follow up on the conversation we had, the good conversation we had prior to this hearing regarding CCUS. The International Energy Agency, which you've had numerous leadership positions at since 2016, states, and I quote, "Reaching net zero emissions will be virtually impossible without CCUS." I believe Montana can and should play a major role in the future development and commercialization of CCUS technology. As we chatted, we have a global responsibility as global stewards to the environment to ensure that we're leading in this technology, because that will help places like China and India and others as they think about need to reduce emissions. My question is, under your leadership, will DOE prioritize carbon capture technology in order to reduce emissions, while at the same time protecting and expanding our Montana energy jobs?
So absolutely, and to get to net zero by 2050, which is what the president has put on the table, and I completely support, we've got to work quickly, and we've got to work on a wide variety of technologies. This is going to take a wide swath of innovation, working in technologies. CCUS is an incredibly important technology now. It could be even more impactful in the future, but we've got to go to scale on it. And my hope is, as should be the case in every area, the United States should be leading the world on these technologies with all sorts of market opportunities for our companies as well. So look forward to working with you on that as well, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Turk.
Thank you. Senator Heinrich.
Welcome, and congratulations on your nomination. And in particular, thank you for the time you spent talking with me yesterday. We very much look forward to getting you out to New Mexico as well, to visit Sandia and Los Alamos and WIP. But I want to focus my first question on something we spoke a lot about yesterday, in particular with regard to current communities in oil and gas basins. I want to get your thoughts on the long-term role that hydrogen is going to play in solving some of the challenges that we currently solve with hydrocarbons, and in particular, the relationship between today's upstream oil and gas sector and the potential to use much of that engineering and workforce to really catch up to the rest of the world with respect to hydrogen.
So thank you, first of all, for meeting with me before this hearing. I very much appreciated that conversation. And just as with Senator Daines, I'm jealous that you get to go to New Mexico on a regular basis. One of the favorite places I ever traveled with my parents was to Chaco Canyon, which is just a remarkable place for those who've not had a chance to go there. I enjoyed our conversation in particular on hydrogen. As you know, it's a technology I focused on. I helped co-lead an extensive report, the most ever analysis we did at the IEA on hydrogen for the G20. And I think there's huge opportunities for hydrogen as a versatile part of the clean energy future. Whether for hard to decarbonize industrial applications or long distance freight, hydrogen has a lot of capabilities, a lot of qualities that lend itself towards being very useful in the future. We need to drive those price points down, certainly with green hydrogen from electrolysis, which is why blue hydrogen, that is hydrogen with natural gas in particular, with CCUS, can be an incredibly important part of getting hydrogen at scale, clean hydrogen, carbon-free hydrogen. And as we analyzed in our report and as we talked about, one of the key opportunities there to jumpstart this hydrogen is look at where we have industrial clusters, look at where we have those workers who have worked on technologies that can be useful in hydrogen, take advantage of that, make the investments there, and really get it to scale and use those hubs as a really jumping off point for broader application of hydrogen.
No, I appreciate that very much. There's a growing interest in, we have 2 basins in the state, but in particular, I've seen a lot of interest coming out of the San Juan Basin for making that transition to hydrogen and using the existing infrastructure to support that transition as well. Talk to me a little bit about transmission and how we do a better job of stimulating additional investment there and the role that DOE can play when obviously much of the challenge there is citing local jurisdictions and dealing with multi-state challenges of moving transmission across multiple jurisdictions. But really, what can DOE do to help us facilitate transmission planning more effectively and jumpstart this so that we can match up our clean generation with the areas of demand better?
So I think transmission is an absolutely key issue that we need to focus on more, not only at DOE, but in other parts of the federal government. Secretary Granholm has spoken extensively about this. This is an area of passion for hers, rightfully so, and if I'm confirmed, I would certainly look to do whatever I can do to help on that front. We've got some great capabilities in the department, including the national labs that have focused on transmission and the grids more generally, in really trying to map out where we need transmission, how to deal with some of the issues going forward. One area of the department that I'd be particularly eager to boost back up is the policy office at the Department of Energy. During Secretary Moniz' days in the Obama administration when I worked there, the policy office was a very robust office. I think it had 80 or maybe even more people in that office. Unfortunately, the policy office now is maybe 4 to 5 people. It's been very much shrunk back. I think we need to boost that up so that we can think about these transmission issues holistically across the country. And then we need to work with FERC, we need to work with state and locals, we need to work with utilities and make sure that we don't just have nice reports, we need to actually move on the transmission side of things as well.
No, I appreciate your approach there because it is important for DOE not to just produce reports, but to engage and find solutions to move these things forward.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you. And Mr. Turk, thank you for being here, but also thank you for your work with IEA and with our friend, I certainly consider him our friend, Dr. Birol. I also want to thank all of those at IEA for the opportunity to serve on the Global Commission on Energy Efficiency. That was a learning experience for me, and I hope it was beneficial. I appreciate what you have shared with the committee about your interest in critical minerals and the role that that plays, the focus on the full supply chain. I think we have recognized, and several of my colleagues have pointed out, the resources that we have here, what we can provide, and to your point, that it's not only about jobs, but it's a security issue as well, a national security and energy security. So I look forward to working with you on that. You also mentioned the Energy Act, and thank you for recognizing the contribution that came from this committee and the work that Senator Manchin and I did to facilitate that. As you know, within that act, we provided some new flexibility, eligibility, and expansion and transparency for the Title 17 loan program. This is going to help DOE not only finance large-scale projects and distribute funds that way, but also to make them available to state-level entities to finance smaller projects. And as you know, in Alaska, we either have the huge mega project, like proposals for a natural gas pipeline, or we have smaller projects. We've got one that I'm really interested and excited in. It's out near Dutch Harbor. This is the Murkowski volcano, and they are looking to tap into that geothermal resource there to basically displace diesel in that community and really work to reduce all levels of emissions. So the question to you is whether or not, or how, I guess, DOE will allocate funding to these state-level financing entities, recognizing that that's really going to be key in terms of resources to again, some of these smaller scale projects. In addition to speaking to how that might be allocated, I guess I'd like to know that you'll commit to better understanding some of these projects that we have in Alaska that provide great opportunity, whether it's Murkowski and an opportunity for folks to meet with you and share with you what is going on with that specific project or others. That takes a trip to Alaska oftentimes, and we're happy to host you out there. But can you speak to the Title 17 and the opportunities that providing resources to our state-run entities can be helpful for smaller scale projects?
Well, absolutely, Senator. And I have to say, with my IEA hat on, thank you for all the partnership with Dr. Birol. The IEA is a very special organization, and having you be such a partner, including on the commission, was incredibly important. And congratulations for the Energy Act. Look forward to further discussions on critical minerals. On the loan program, and Secretary Granholm has spoken about this as well, I personally think this is a huge area of opportunity for the department, for communities around the world. Just yesterday, it was announced who the new head of the loan program is going to be, Jigar Shah, who's an incredibly dynamic colleague, and I think he'll be a terrific leader of that. But we've got to make the loan program and other parts of DOE work not just for big projects, as you say, but for smaller projects and smaller communities as well. Growing up in a town of 9,000 people, I know what the kind of employment means in those kinds of communities. So absolutely would love, if I'm confirmed, working with you, working with your staff, making changes that are necessary to the loan program or other parts of what DOE is working on to make sure everyone benefits, all countries, all states, all communities can benefit from these opportunities.
Well, it's a considerable initiative, and again, we want to make it work at all levels. One of the things that you have indicated a great deal of interest in is the Arctic Energy Office. I've had an opportunity to speak to Secretary Granholm about this. Last year, we worked to reestablish that. There's a pretty great partnership going on with the Cold Climate Housing Research Center and NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab. I look at partnerships like that as really key to what we're going to be able to do with not only developing critical infrastructure within the Arctic, but also what we're doing to help gain additional efficiencies, advancing the technologies that will allow us to do a little bit better in different spaces. So very quickly, because we're out of time here, but your view in terms of what we can do to focus on DOE's role as it relates to the Arctic.
So as we were talking a little bit before the hearing, I've had experience in Arctic Council activities when I was with the State Department. It's a shame that not more Americans appreciate and understand that the U.S. is an Arctic country.
We're working on that.
Very importantly. Hopefully we can make progress on that piece. I think the Arctic Energy Office is an incredibly important office. It's too small right now. We need to work on that. And I think there's an awful lot of partnership the Department of Energy already has and can have even more of. If you think of the energy challenges that communities in Alaska face, but also the huge opportunities, whether it's on critical minerals or elsewhere. So if I'm confirmed, I absolutely would love to work with you on this further.
Well, we'd love to work with you. We'd encourage you to consider a visit when we're all more able to be traveling. But many challenges, and like to work with you again on some of the international Arctic policies as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. And next we have Senator Hoven. No, I'm sorry. We have Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You got the H right. So, Mr. Turk, I asked the following two initial questions of every nominee who comes before any of the committees on which I sit. The first question, since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No.
Mr. Turk, I was very pleased to hear you say that you want to basically restore and beef up the policy office, which has plummeted from, I think I heard you say 80 people when you were there to some 4 or 5. So I am totally supportive of the need to make sure that our policy office is able to do what they should be doing. And also another office that I am concerned about is the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Office, which has also declined in employment. I hope that you will also beef up the EERE office.
Well, thank you, Senator. I was the deputy on the Energy Agency Review Team, and we took a very close look at ERE. And what we saw is, despite the funding increases that the Congress appropriated to ERE over the last several years, the staffing levels did not increase commensurate with that funding. So we have a backlog right now, an opportunity to really bring in a huge amount of new talent in ERE. And if I'm confirmed, I look very much forward to being helpful to move that along and to get ERE fully staffed up.
I think it is really important for this department to have the staffing necessary, because as you noted, that this is a department that should rely on facts, data, information in order to make its decisions. You may know that Hawaii has an ambitious goal of reaching 100% renewable energy power, renewable power, and a carbon neutral economy by 2045. And DOE has been a key partner for Hawaii in developing and progressing towards its goals. And just as some of my colleagues have invited you to visit their states, I would invite you to come to Hawaii. One of President Biden's key goals is that taking action on climate change will help build back the economy and create new well-paying jobs for people working in clean energy and improving energy efficiency. So you noted that we are in the midst of a clean energy revolution and the need for a wide range of energy technology. And when you said that, I sensed an enthusiasm on your part in noting that. So can you talk a bit more about how this clean energy revolution can support our economic recovery and create high-quality jobs?
Well, thank you, Senator. I'd absolutely love to come visit you in Hawaii and make sure the department is doing everything it can to support the opportunities there. I think this is a huge, huge opportunity for us. The Build Back Better plan and program that President Biden has put on the table, the Congress, of course, looking at the recovery part of stimulus funding after this initial bill, is a huge, huge opportunity for America. It's a huge opportunity to transform our grids, to invest in those technologies. And again, I am enthusiastic on the wide range of technologies. There's an awful lot of potential technologies that can be such a critical part of the future, but we need to make the investments. We need to make the investments in the innovation. We need to have the partnerships with the entrepreneurs, with the companies, with the investors who are going to take those to scale. So I'm incredibly enthusiastic at this part of DOE's portfolio, I have to say.
I share your enthusiasm. As noted, you have a wide variety of experiences, and you have a long record of serving in Congress and the Department of Energy, State Department, National Security Council, and the International Energy Agency. Can you discuss how the times in your career where you had to help people build consensus, come together, and certainly you would need to do that with as Deputy Secretary of Energy. So can you describe a time when you had to bring some diverse viewpoints together to build consensus?
Well, it's something I enjoy doing. I've had, as you mentioned, a wide variety of experiences where I've had to do that. Maybe it comes from my parents, my two older brothers, younger sister, where you have to have consensus. We've got 3 kids, my wife Emily and I. You have to find common ground with your family as well. And as Senator Conrad said, and I hope this comes through, especially if I'm confirmed, all the talk in the world doesn't matter if you don't actually get something done in the real world. And so you've got to have discussions, you've got to listen to people, you've got to try to drive consensus so that we can get on with what we need to get on to in order to get to our carbon reduction targets, in order to have the kinds of jobs that we need to. So absolutely, throughout my career, I've really focused on the consensus building.
Thank you very much. It's important for someone in your position. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Now, Senator Hoeven.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Turk, good to see you today, and thank you for our visit yesterday. We talked a lot about carbon capture and underground storage. Dr. Faith Birol, your former colleague, head of the IEA, said that CCUS is the most important technology that exists in energy today. And as you know, in North Dakota, we are leading the way forward on what I call cracking the code, which is capturing and storing CO2 from coal-fired electric plants, as well as I told you, on ethanol plants. So my first question is, do you agree that CCUS is indispensable to marry the benefits of low-cost energy with environmental stewardship?
Well, absolutely, Senator, and thank you for taking the time to talk with me a few days ago. And it was incredibly impressive to hear all the progress when you were governor and as a senator, really leading ahead of the curve on CCUS and really moving the envelope on that. I think it can be it already is an incredibly important technology, but we've really got to get to scale here. And we need not only the federal government moving in that direction, we need the incentives, the price signals going forward, but we need corporate leadership and state and local leadership on this as well. And thank you for all the terrific efforts you've done in North Dakota.
Well, your answer is going exactly the right direction. It leads right into my next question. That's just, will you work with us to ensure projects that we're working on, whether it's Project Tundra, whether it's our cooperative agreements between the EERC at the University of North Dakota and the Department of Energy, whether it's our efforts to make sure that we enhance 45Q and make sure that we can utilize the DOE and the RUS loan program so that the plants can put this equipment in place. And then, as you say, we can, through a partnership between the industry, our state, and the Department of Energy, actually make this happen. Are you committed to making that happen?
So absolutely, Senator. If I'm confirmed, I very much look forward to working with you and your staff, whether it's Project Tundra, the terrific partnership with the University of North Dakota, And let me just highlight in particular, especially for you and other senators involved in 45Q, how important that piece of legislation is. And we really need to get it up and running fully and take advantage of those incentives.
Well, and I appreciate that you worked with my former colleague, Senator Conrad. It was nice to hear from him this morning. So I know you've been to North Dakota, obviously, many times, but you'll commit to come out to North Dakota and, of course, see what we're doing. I've already invited the Energy Secretary, and she's committed to come out, but you'll come out and see what we're doing and work with us on it.
Any excuse I can get to come back out to North Dakota, Teddy Roosevelt National Park. I've been to North Dakota both in the summer and the winter. I think I'd prefer to come out in the summer, but happy to come out in the winter as well.
Well, that's great. No, you can do your winter trip to Hawaii and then come see us in the summer. That would work very, very well. And again, we had a good conversation today. I appreciate your commitment to work with us on the CCUS. And I just think there's incredible opportunity for us to do some amazing things there. Pipeline infrastructure, we need transmission, we need pipeline infrastructure to move energy around the country safely and cost effectively, whether it's renewable or traditional energy. Are you committed to helping develop the energy infrastructure we need?
So we've got a huge opportunity on energy infrastructure, I think, and very much look forward, Senator, working with you if I'm confirmed. And I think we have an opportunity with, as we discussed, CO2 pipelines in particular, so that we can take emissions, the CO2, where it's happening, whether ethanol plants or otherwise, and bringing it to places where there's storage opportunities. So eager to work with you on all of those issues.
And again, you recognize the value of the cooperative agreements and are committed to them with energy centers like the Energy and Environmental Research Center at the University of North Dakota. You support those kind of partnerships with the Department of Energy?
So I think those kind of partnerships are absolutely critical. And as you know, we need not only smart people in DC, we need smart people around the country, smart people who grew up in their communities and know their communities best, so that we have tailored solutions for particular geographies, particular communities. So I think those partnerships are absolutely critical.
Yeah, and then the last area is commitment to the national labs and the update and the research that's necessary for our nuclear deterrent, committed to support that effort.
So completely agree. As we've talked about, Minot Air Force Base in particular plays such an important role, 2 legs of the triad just at Minot, and it's an incredibly important part of the jurisdiction of the Department of Energy. And I certainly look forward to working with you, if I'm confirmed, to make sure that we have a safe, reliable, secure stockpile.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Turk, and I really do look forward to working with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to emphasize something you were talking with Senator Murkowski about, which is partnerships. We have a partnership between the University of Maine and Oak Ridge National Laboratory on additive manufacturing and cellulosic materials used in additive manufacturing. It's very productive, and I commend it to you. I hope that that's the kind of relationship that we can continue to maintain and support and expand.
So thank you, Senator King, and thanks for meeting with me as well before the hearing. I very much appreciated our conversation, and I think there's all sorts of partnerships that exist, offshore wind among the additive manufacturing, other areas, and very much look forward to strengthening those partnerships.
Great. I'll look forward to welcoming you to Maine. You're going to have quite a tour between North Dakota, Montana, New Mexico, and I hope you can add Maine to the list.
Well, Maine is a beautiful state, Acadia National Park and all else in Maine, so happy and eager to get up there.
Looking forward to it. Methane, I believe, is the low-hanging fruit of climate change. And to the extent the department can sponsor through ARPA-E or other programs research in terms of methane control and capture, I think that's an enormously important part of the work that you can do. As you know, methane's 80 times more potent a greenhouse gas than CO2. It resides in the atmosphere for a shorter period, so if we can cut the amount of methane that's going into the atmosphere, that's a big deal. And I understand that there is a project with Bridger Photonics in Bozeman, Montana, on high-tech ways to detect these leaks. That's the kind of research and development that I think we need, and I hope methane can be a focus of your attention in terms of, because it's intimately related to energy production and energy generation.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Methane not only needs to be a focus of the Department of Energy, and if I'm confirmed, my focus, but frankly, all of us. It's incredibly frustrating that we have so much methane emissions in the U.S. And other countries around the world when we have cost-effective solutions and actually make money in many circumstances.
Yeah, this is a place where we don't have to spend a fortune. It's a relatively low cost in terms of the benefit. Let me move on. After methane, I think equally important in the long-term energy picture is storage. I don't think there's anything more important than that you can do along with research on methane is research on storage. We need 100-hour grid scale storage. Once that occurs, then the potential of renewables will be truly unlocked. I see that as I say, one of the most important things you could do. Talk to me about storage and where it will be on your priority list.
So storage needs to be at the very top of the priority list. It's an incredibly important technology. One of the things I'd be particularly excited about if I'm confirmed at the DOE, we've talked about these earth shots to really try to have ARPA-E, the labs, the applied offices all working together seamlessly across the Department of Energy enterprise. And a long duration storage earth shot, I think, makes a ton of sense to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can, especially with that long duration storage as you suggest.
Well, one other aspect of that, and this ties back to your current or your just prior occupation, I've always thought this would be something that we should be pursuing internationally. Why should everybody be trying to invent the same thing? And if there can be international collaboration on development of a technology that will help the entire world, it seems to me that ought to also be a focus of the Department of Energy, is fostering that kind of collaboration on these joint problems.
Well, I completely agree. The U.S. is the innovation powerhouse, has been, needs to be. But take storage. If we had storage solutions, long duration, cost-effective storage solutions, you look at a country like India. India, over the next couple decades, will build an additional grid the size of Europe on their already sizable grid. If they had storage solutions that allowed them to go even further in solar, even further in wind, then they wouldn't have to build so many other kinds of sources that are more carbon intensive. So storage is a key part, not only in the U.S., but internationally.
And of course, a molecule of CO2 doesn't care what country it comes from as far as its impact on the climate.
Well, that's right. I think that's why the U.S. should lead here. The U.S. should lead ambitiously.
One final question for the record, because I'm out of time, and that is, in terms of grid modernization, is the problem wires and poles, or is it software and technology? In other words, is the grid inadequate physically, or is it a question of management and the technology of integrating new power sources, for example?
So I think it's both, and we need to have the planning to take into account the technology piece, but also the management piece as well, and to be really holistic, forward-thinking, building the grids of the future. We've got transmission issues we need to work on in parts of the country. We've got distributed energy resources coming onto the grid. We need to have the grid that can appropriately deal with those.
But the grid of the future doesn't necessarily involve lots of new wires and poles. It may involve more the technology of integrating resources.
Well, absolutely right. We need to be smart. We need to be smart and cost-effective about this, and the solutions of the past don't need to be the solutions of the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This time I'm going to call, if you don't mind, I'm going to call back on Senator Barrasso because he has another. You sure? Okay, all right. Senator Langford.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Turk, good to see you, and thanks for the long conversation that we've already had. Let me walk through a couple of things just to be able to get some high points here. How many years do you think we're going to continue to have the internal combustion engine used in America?
So electric vehicles have made incredibly impressive strides over recent years, but it's still in the single digits per percentage for car sales. Now, some other countries are ahead of that. General Motors. Others are making very ambitious electric vehicle targets, but internal combustion engines will certainly be with us for several more years.
Yeah, you've studied this for a long time, and you've looked at some of the length of it. Is that 5 more years? Is that 10 more years? Is that 50 more years? Just based on the studies that you've already been a part of and the teams you've been around.
Well, so it's very difficult to predict these kinds of technologies. It's the price point, it's range anxiety with electric vehicles and certain applications. So there's a number of things that need to happen for electric vehicles to take off, can be helpful from a climate change perspective, for sure. So it's very difficult to predict where this is going. We do see some countries, Norway has about 50% of each vehicle sold in Norway is electric vehicle. Most other countries are in the single digits.
Right, but still back to my same question. How long do you think we're going to use the internal combustion engine? What are the estimates that are out there? You've read it. What are the estimates that are out there of how long? And I understand there's technology that's very disruptive in every area on this. We talk a lot about electric, but then hydrogen continues to say, hey, we're back here as well. So there's lots of other technologies that are rising, and all of those are good. I'm just asking about the internal combustion engine. What's your best guess, and what are the estimates out there?
So the way we do it at the IEA is we run scenarios and look at different versions of the future. What does that mean for this technology or that technology? And they really range incredibly significantly. Those have been updated in recent time to have more electric vehicles coming on quicker, given the corporate commitments, given the other commitments. But internal combustion engines, certainly, you know, there's an issue where electric vehicles work quite well for passenger vehicles, more challenging for for freight transport as well. So we need solutions there.
How many years do you think we'll still have the internal combustion engine?
So
that was the original question.
So I
really not trying to be combative, just trying to get that number.
Well, and I'm trying to, you know, it depends on a lot of decisions that we don't know from the government side, from the private sector side. It's certainly going to be with us for this decade, next decade. We'll see where the corporate commitments and the other government commitments are made.
So at least 20 more years.
So internal combustion engines, the other thing, a lot of people, I know where I grew up, we kept our car for 10, 15, 20 years as well, right? So we've got an awful lot of internal combustion vehicles right now on the market that will be here for many, many years to come.
Okay. That's my concern, is that there seems to be a sense in some in D.C., and I'm not saying you have that sense, that somehow we're going to sell enough Teslas that folks that are driving their 1982 Ford truck are just going to park it. And unless there is some assumption that I don't know of that so far President Biden has not said, and hope he wouldn't say, that there's going to be some kind of imposition to say you have to turn off that vehicle, they're going to be around for a long time. And a lot of folks, especially folks that are in poverty, because electric vehicles are very expensive to be able to purchase, that I don't want to create a mandate on people in poverty to suddenly say your gas prices are going to skyrocket, so we're going to force you out of this, basically raising your prices and your cost of living. Transportation, obviously, with diesel engines and carrying semi-trucks, every single product that we have is very dependent currently on oil and gas. So again, I'm an all-the-above energy state. We are proudly that in Oklahoma. 45% renewable is in our mix, and I've had multiple different folks from the Biden team that I've talked to that the states they're from are not close to what the Oklahoma's fuel mix is for our diversity of fuel. And they lecture me about being more diverse in fuel, and I say, I'll hear that as soon as you match what we're already doing. But saying that, I do want folks to be able to know that we can't make a rapid transition. The folks in my state are very concerned there'll be unrealistic expectations that'll be put down on people immediately, and they'll suddenly lose their jobs based on a mandate from someone who's trying to create something rather than recognizing what is. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes perfect sense. And from the DOE perspective, it is a solutions catalyst. And there's an awful lot that the DOE can do to keep reducing those price points. Affordability, I think, is absolutely key, whether you're talking about vehicles or electricity. We need to have reliability, security, affordability, and clean energy as well. So there's a lot more that we can do, should be doing, to reduce these price points to make these technologies affordable for everyone.
I know I'm a couple seconds over. This is a very quick answer. Energy independence, is that a national security issue or a national preference issue? Whether it's critical minerals, whatever it may be, is energy independence national security or national preference?
National security.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Mr.
Senator.
Chairman.
Senator Masto, Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Turk, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me earlier this week, and congratulations again on your nomination. You're not going to be surprised by the first question that I asked, but as we all believe in Nevada, that Yucca Mountain's not suitable for a national nuclear waste repository, and during her confirmation, now Secretary Granholm confirmed that the Biden administration opposes storing nuclear waste and spent fuel at Yucca Mountain. The Secretary also committed to working with my office and the rest of the Nevada congressional delegation in finding workable, consent-based solutions to better address the disposal of our nation's nuclear waste. So are you in agreement with the administration's position on Yucca Mountain, and will you also commit to working with Nevada delegation on consent-based solutions?
Well, thank you, Senator, and thanks for meeting with me ahead of this hearing. And as you said, and as Secretary Granholm has said, President Biden has been very, very clear on Yucca Mountain. And I think we need to do exactly as you suggest, take the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission and have consent-based options for our nuclear waste in this country. And we need to think of those incentives that will work for those communities who have their consent so that we can deal with this issue in a rational, reasonable, and responsible manner.
Thank you. Thank you. Separate subject. Last year, the state of Nevada finalized an agreement that I helped to secure with DOE to begin removing 1/2 metric ton of plutonium this year that had been secretly shipped to the Nevada National Security Site from the Savannah River site in South Carolina. Secretary Granholm has reported that the National Security Administration, DOE, are on track to meet this agreement. If confirmed, will you commit to maintaining a strong line of communication with my office and Senator Rosen's office as the agency continues to work to adhere to this agreement with the state of Nevada?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And then Nevadans' trust in the Department of Energy's nuclear program has long been strained. So my question for you is, if confirmed, what will you do to improve communication and help build back that trust with the state of Nevada?
Well, thank you, Senator. And as we talked about and as other senators have asked about, I prided myself throughout my career on really listening, really working on the communication. And as we talked about, we need solutions that work for particular communities, particular states as well. So absolutely commit to you to make sure that the lines of communication, if I'm confirmed with myself, with others at the Department of Energy, are very much there.
Mr. Thank you. Last week, the Biden administration released an executive order directing federal departments and agencies to identify ways to secure the U.S. supply chains, including critical minerals that we've talked about this morning and large capacity batteries against any types of risk and vulnerabilities. Nevada is currently the only state in the U.S. with an active lithium mine. And we have a number of companies that are in the process of opening battery recycling facilities. Which will be essential to helping keep our critical minerals in this country so that they can be reprocessed and fed back into that supply chain. So as the department looks to implement the order, what role do you anticipate battery recycling can play? And will you be sure to look to Nevada and my office as a resource when it comes to the significant supply chain opportunities that my state has to offer?
Well, if confirmed, Senator, I very much would look forward to working with you and your staff on the huge opportunity that critical minerals represent, not only for Nevada, but throughout the country. The national security imperative, the jobs piece, whether that's battery recycling, lithium mining, and I think we need to have those long-term signals. We need to have this as a real priority for this country.
Thank you. And then when we spoke earlier this week, we discussed the opportunities that come with investments in research and development and the potential for DOE to dig deeper into the deployment of emissions-reducing technologies. I recently introduced a suite of electric vehicle legislation. Among the bills in the package are DOE programs to deploy clean school buses and charging infrastructure in our national parks and forests, as well as legislation to establish an EV commission co-led by the DOE, which would create a national strategy on electric vehicles. If you're confirmed, will you commit to working with my office to ensure that DOE is a strong partner in helping deploy EV technology?
Absolutely. As I've mentioned, the EV opportunities here, whether it's passenger vehicles or buses or others, are tremendous. So very much would look forward to working with you, and congratulations on your legislation.
Thank you. And again, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Risch.
Thank you very much. Mr. Turk, thank you for your service, and thank you for coming here today to answer our hopefully not too difficult questions. From a very parochial standpoint, I'm from the state of Idaho, and we have a place called the Idaho National Lab. And I look at your resume, and I like everybody, people have specialties, and yours seems to be in the climate change lane, if you would. INL plays an important role in that, obviously, because nuclear energy is critical to where we're going in the future. Have you visited the INL by any chance?
So I've not had a chance to do so. I would love to do so. I'm very familiar with Idaho.
Well, we
National
can help
Lab.
you out by arranging for such a trip.
Good. I'd be happy to
go
come.
ahead. You were saying.
Good. I think there's incredible work. I have talked with folks who work at Idaho National Lab. It's, I think, just an impressive group of folks there more generally. And on the nuclear issue, more generally, I think nuclear has played such an important part of our carbon-free baseload power historically. We need to work on the lifetime extensions and make sure that we have that capability, in my opinion. And then there's exciting, and Idaho National Lab is at the tip of the spear here, exciting small modular reactors, other kind of advanced reactors as well. So if I'm confirmed, I would absolutely love to work with you and certainly come out and visit Idaho National Lab.
Thanks. I appreciate that. You've given a very brief thumbnail sketch of the Idaho National Lab, but it has a long history. As you know, it was the birthplace of nuclear power in the United States, in the world, and indeed in the universe. We still have the first light bulbs that were lit by nuclear energy. We've built 52 reactors there. And as you correctly note, the SMR is a matter in development. And it's exciting to see that they're even looking beyond that generation to the next generation, to the microreactor, which will change the world, actually, as we go there. And the lab changed the world when it developed the first reactor. So we look forward to that. It also has a growing mission in cybersecurity. In 2018, as you know, the DOE established the Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security and Emergency Response, more commonly known as CSER. And that's how the lab in Idaho is playing a major role in those efforts, and we'll continue to do so because we have some unique capabilities there. We've been at the nuclear business for many decades, and along with that comes expertise in control systems. And so that's one of the reasons why cybersecurity has gravitated to Idaho. Plus, we have some test beds there that aren't duplicated anywhere in the world, really. So, tell me about your view of the administration's view of nuclear energy and where we're going on nuclear energy.
So I think, and again, thanks for Idaho National Lab, as you said, not only leadership on nuclear, but on cybersecurity, which is absolutely critical. So on nuclear energy, certainly if you look historically at the U.S. and the current snapshot of where we're at in the U.S., the amount of carbon-free baseload power coming from nuclear is incredibly impressive and a big part of the equation. Some countries I've been living in France. France's nuclear numbers are even higher than in the U.S. in terms of the percentage of electricity generation. The big issues in advanced economies in the U.S. and others is, do you extend the lifetime of those plants to keep that baseload carbon-free power for longer or not? A critical issue. And then again, really focusing Idaho National Lab, other DOE resources on the small modular reactors, as you said, the exciting opportunities for nuclear microreactors or otherwise into the future.
Well, I appreciate that, and I would you call it a business as usual when it comes to going forward with the nuclear in the United States?
So certainly when it comes to small modular reactors and other technologies, whether it's CCUS, offshore wind, there can't be business as usual if we're going to be successful for the American people. To do what we need to do on the climate change front, to provide the jobs of the future, to really outcompete China and others. So I think on nuclear and these other technologies, it can't be business as usual. We have to have a sense of urgency. We really need to go forward boldly, in my opinion.
I guess maybe that was a bad choice of words, business as usual. You're telling me that your view is that we do need to press ahead with the nuclear option of all of the things that are on the table for us.
Well, absolutely, both from the innovation side of things, but also lifetime extensions and making sure that we benefit from that baseload power from the existing nuclear plants as well.
Certainly a legitimate effort. My time's up. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kelly.
How about that for timing?
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect.
Hey, Mr. Turk, thank you for your testimony. Demand management is going to be is helpful in expanding renewable energy use in the United States. In Arizona, consumers and utilities are turning to smart thermostats and other devices to shift energy consumption during peak hours. And I understand that the Department of Energy runs a smart grid R&D program, and other offices are working on demand response technology. Has DOE or another federal agency, as far as you know, looked into expanding or mandating the use of demand response technology in federal buildings?
Well, thank you, Senator. And this is an incredibly important area, smart demand response. I think we've only, and your state is making strides here, I think we've only had the tip of the iceberg in terms of the potential for this kind of technology, especially when you match it up with increasing amounts of solar and wind and intermittent renewables as well. One of the reports I led at the International Energy Agency was on digitalization in energy, really looking at what these digital tools allow us, whether it's thermostats or refrigerators or other kinds of appliances that you can turn on, turn off, and manage the loads as efficiently as possible. DOE does do an awful lot in this area, not only at DOE headquarters, but also in the national labs. NREL and PNNL, a number of national labs are focused on this. I think your question is an excellent one. We should be doing more with the federal government infrastructure on smart demand response. As Secretary Granholm has said very eloquently, the federal government needs to lead by example, build the markets, prime the pump, if you will. And so if I'm confirmed this is an area I'd be eager to work with you on.
Yeah, in Arizona last summer, we had a challenge there. We have 3 major utilities. When the temperature rises in California, that's where we usually go to, for increased energy capacity when we're running short. And it was a period of a couple weeks, and the utility was able to, when they got in a tight spot, turn down the thermostats in 30,000 homes across the state. And these consumers signed up, to do this. Very effective way to get a utility out of a critical situation. So I want to move to electric vehicles for a second. So Arizona is a major player in the EV space, and last month, Lucid Motors in Casa Grande, which is just outside of Phoenix, they built a factory that's going to be capable of producing an EV car about every 10 minutes once they're up to full capacity. So what federal investment or incentives are needed to develop the charging infrastructure, not only in the state of Arizona, but nationally, as we expand the number of electric vehicles on the road?
Well, it's terrific to hear of the electric vehicle progress, including the jobs component of it in Arizona. And as Secretary Granholm has spoken so eloquently and given her experience with vehicles from her time as governor of Michigan, it's a huge potential opportunity here, and we've got to move aggressively. What we need to do is have an all-of-government approach on electric vehicles. DOE has parts of the responsibility, the Department of Transportation has parts of the responsibility, and we need to have a unified strategy working with you, working with other senators who are interested in this issue, so that we can claim those jobs, we can claim those emission reductions, we can claim those opportunities going forward. So very much looking forward to working with you on that if I'm confirmed.
Well, thank you, Mr. Turk, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
I just think that we might be down to Mr. Marshall. Senator Marshall, my friend.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I'm glad you saved the best for last. And I would just remind the chairman, I'm very grateful for Senator Rish's comments about the nuclear option being used somewhere other than on the Senate floor. So it was exciting to hear him mention some other type of nuclear options. All right, Mr. Turk, congratulations and welcome. As I start my remarks, I want to just start by saying that you and I share so many goals. My goal is that I would leave this world cleaner, healthier, safer than it is today. And I'm so proud that I can say that from growing up until to now, at least in Kansas. I think that's an accurate statement. Let's keep going the same direction. At the same time, I have a responsibility as a senator, a grandfather, a father, to what the cost of energy is, and as well as the importance of energy independence. And your goal, my goal, is how do we balance those as I hear that discussion. And I'm going to start just with asking for some simple advice. If you look at the state of Kansas, my home, hit with 11 days of temperatures below zero, and like many states suffered during that time. The state of Kansas, and I'm very proud of this, 40% of electricity is generated from wind. So 40% wind, about a third of electricity generated from coal, about 18% from nuclear, and then whatever else is left. On the other hand, we heat our homes with a lot of natural gas. Without the coal plants in Kansas, whatever economic impact we would have had, it would have been double or triple. Coal was really was able to keep functioning, and nuclear able to keep functioning in Kansas for the most part. I understand some other places didn't. So if you were giving advice to Kansans and what that mix should look like and what we can do to prevent this in the future, what would be your advice, and how would you frame that conversation?
So the biggest piece of advice is to have resiliency in all of our energy systems. And I think what we saw in Texas and other states affected by the recent cold spell was we weren't resilient on natural gas, we weren't resilient on coal as much as we could have been, we weren't resilient on nuclear, we weren't resilient on some of the wind turbines as well. So we need to have resiliency across all of these sources, and making sure that the electricity grid and the natural gas pipelines all work in a variety of different conditions. So I think the resiliency is the piece where I would focus on. And it's maybe it's not the most interesting topic or the sexiest of topics or whatnot, but it's the kind of work that needs to be done day in and day out. And certainly from the Department of Energy perspective, if I'm confirmed, I think there's an awful lot the department can do working with state and locals utilities to try to make all our systems as resilient as they can be.
And with the resiliency certainly comes a cost, and I think somehow we need to factor that into the equation as well. Let's talk about biofuels, another issue real important to Kansas. What do you feel the future of biofuels are for America?
Well, as I've said, and I'm a firm believer in this, to achieve the goals that we need to achieve, whether you're talking about climate change or you're talking about jobs, winning the jobs of the future, we need to have a variety of clean energy technologies, a variety of solutions. From the Department of Energy side, as Chairman Manchin and others have pointed to, the innovation agenda, to drive innovation in all of these areas and technologies. So biofuels is certainly a very important technology, a very important area, and we need to keep innovating in all of these. We can't take tools off the tool belt.
Great. Speaking of innovation, and I appreciate your concise answers. You're probably some of the most concise answers of anybody I've ever heard up here. I want to talk about innovation and agriculture and carbon capture. That, right now, agriculture is really the only industry out there really seriously involved with carbon capture, and there's future opportunities as well. What does that future look like to you, and specifically for agriculture?
So agriculture has played an incredibly important role of carbon sinks and really taking a lot of the carbon in the U.S. and in other countries as well. But I think there's a lot more potential there. So certainly, if I'm confirmed, working with the Department of Agriculture, others here to really drive that innovation so that we can have cost-effective. You're right to focus on affordability. We need to make this cost-effective so that this is an important part of the future for farmers, ranchers around the country.
Well, great, and I just want to brag on agriculture and ranchers. We were the original conservationists doing so many things for this carbon sink like you described, and soil health. We've been doing no-till farming on our farm for over 20 years, cover crops, and there's certainly more and more opportunities out there, and we look forward to working with you in agriculture and energy as well.
Well, and I spent my summers going through cornfields and doing something called detasseling, where you go through and pick the tassels off of corn plants. So whatever I can do to help you if I'm confirmed, Senator, eager to work with you.
Well, we'll try to get you out there and do some detasseling in Kansas as well. Thank you so much, and
I
I
didn't
back.
enjoy doing it, just for the record.
Thank you.
Senator Hickenlooper, is he still on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, it's your turn, sir.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Turk, enjoy listening to your answers. Colorado has 60,000 workers who work in clean energy. We're in the top 10 states for jobs in wind and solar. It's a robust and diverse economy. It includes construction and manufacturing, in many ways the fast-growing parts of our economy. Energy efficiency is another good example. As you know, DOE's Invention and Innovation Grant Program for individuals and for small businesses has been unfunded or minimally funded for a number of years. So in your opinion, how would more robust funding for DOE to partner with small businesses, and universities, and national laboratories, how would that help bring more clean energy, more energy efficiency to the marketplace?
Well, thank you, Senator. I think there's an awful lot that DOE can do and do better with small businesses in particular, and you certainly know and understand small businesses given your background. As you know, you have NREL, which is one of our terrific national labs there in Colorado. They have some programs already. I think there's one called something like the Wells Fargo Accelerator, to try to work with local businesses and to make sure that the labs not only are providing cutting-edge innovation for the whole country, but are working with local partners, local small businesses, to make sure that these are innovation hubs. So I personally think there's an awful lot more we can do, whether it's with NREL or our other national labs across the country.
Great. And obviously, as you mentioned, DOE has a large presence in Colorado, and NREL out in Golden, Colorado. I've been there probably at least a dozen times. It's one of the, I think, most intriguing places because they are creating innovation pretty much every day, and they're playing a leading role in the transition to a sustainable, low emissions energy system, both for our nation and ultimately for the world. They have a remarkable team of researchers and scientists that are, transforming how the nation and the world use energy, making sure that as we develop new energy systems, we're not missing any unintended consequences. And I think the development of these critical infrastructures and technologies depends on making sure that they have the world-class facilities for their research. And I think too often we lose sight of the payback we get from investing in the lab equipment and facilities to make sure that there's adequate space for R&D. And I think this helps to attract talent. It helps us retain talent, and then it maximizes the benefit we get when that talent, either individually or through the synergy of working together, creates real innovation. And I think that enables us to continue to, create the innovation that we've seen so successful in the reduction in costs of all sorts of renewable energy. So can we get your commitment to make sure we work to ensure that our national labs get the funding for that, not just for the personnel they've got in place, but to make sure that they have the facilities necessary?
Well, I'm a firm believer the national labs, the 17 national labs, they're the crown jewels of innovation, not only for the department, but for the country as a whole. And as you say, that means making the investments that are necessary in the facilities, the world-class facilities that we have in NREL and other labs around the country. I've worked with a lot of colleagues from NREL over the years. The talent at NREL is incredibly impressive, as it is in our other national labs as well. So would look forward to working with you, Senator, if I'm confirmed, with others. And I will say Congress has been such an incredibly strong supporter year in and year out of making those kinds of investments that we need so that we have those crown jewels, not only for today, but for all our challenges we'll need them in the future.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I can't overemphasize how much I look forward to working with you going forward. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Senator. If there's no other senators, if you're on Zoom that you haven't done a first round, if there's anybody on Zoom that we might have missed as the senators, if not, we're going to go with Senator Barrasso for a second round.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a couple questions. Specifically, you've been talking a lot about nuclear power and nuclear issues. I want to talk about uranium. For years, Russia and its satellites have unfairly dumped uranium into the U.S. market. As a result, American right now imports about 90% of our uranium from other countries and about 40% of its uranium from Russia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. America's uranium production is at a low right now, a low that we haven't seen since the early 50s, and we talked about this yesterday. Do you believe it is critical that America maintains its ability to produce and process our own uranium for our own nuclear power sector in terms of national security?
Yes, I do.
Last year, the Department requested that Congress provide funding to establish a national uranium reserve and put money into that. Can I have your commitment that, if confirmed, you will complete the establishment of the reserve, create the purchasing program, and buy American-produced uranium this year?
Well, thank you, Senator, for your leadership on this issue for many years, and I'm very familiar with the $75 million that's been appropriated on this. If I'm confirmed, I certainly look forward, not only in this instance, but in other instances, making sure the Department is complying with the will of the Congress with Article 1, and certainly look forward to further talking with you and your staff on this very important issue.
In addition to our foreign adversaries like Russia, the Department of Energy has also actually dumped uranium into the U.S. market. And that's been against the law, but it's happened in both previous administrations. It's undercut the price of uranium, resulted in the cancellation of uranium projects and the loss of jobs in my home state of Wyoming. The GAO has repeatedly found that the Department's actions have violated federal law. So finally, Secretary Perry has largely ended the practice. Can I have your commitment that, if confirmed, you will ensure that the Department's excess uranium is not put into the market and we stay compliant with the law?
So this is an issue that I've not studied up fully. I don't know the particular context and contours, have not had a chance, not being confirmed, to talk with our DOE officials. I would certainly want to do that and talk to them and talk to you further on that issue.
I want to talk about the renewable fuel standard. Unlike large oil refineries, small refineries don't have the economies of scale to comply with our nation's biofuel mandate, the renewable fuel standard, the RFS. This is why Congress allowed small refineries to petition the Environmental Protection Agency for what is known as the hardship relief. So before deciding whether to grant relief, the administrator of the EPA is required by law to consult with the Secretary of Energy. Under the last two administrations, federal courts have rebuked the EPA and the Department of Energy for failing to account for all of the challenges that small refineries face under the RFS. If confirmed, will you ensure that the Department fully accounts for the challenges that small refineries face when evaluating these petitions?
Thank you, Senator. Certainly appreciate whether it's small refineries or small businesses that we need to look at and make sure that the rules are working for everyone on that instance. As you noted, it's an EPA decision, but DOE does have an opportunity to discuss and weigh in, and certainly, if I'm confirmed, would be eager to do so. And again, look forward to talking with you further on this important issue.
And last July, I sent Secretary Brulé a letter encouraging the Department of Energy not just to have people come and visit Wyoming, but to actually establish a presence in my home state of Wyoming. If confirmed, would you give serious consideration to this request to create a Department of Energy office in Wyoming?
So absolutely, Senator. I don't need to tell you how much of an energy powerhouse Wyoming is. I think it's 15 times the amount of energy that you consume, that you produce, and benefit the rest of the country. So would be more than eager to talk to you further about that if I'm confirmed.
Well, and then finally, Mr. Chairman, a number of people have asked you during the hearing about rare earth minerals and China's dominance there. There's actually an editorial in today's lead editorial in the Wall Street Journal, and it is Rare Truths About China's Rare Earths. And I would just recommend that to you, and a number of our members have seen it and follow it. So congratulations on your nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. And Mr. Turk, I just want to thank you on behalf of the committee for being willing to serve this most important position. Your expertise you bring has been very well on display today, and we appreciate the directness, the knowledge you have, and sharing with the rest of our country. I would hope that there's going to be a bipartisan support, and I think there will be. I think that we have a good group of people here that realize your talents. With that, we do have concerns. I know that Senator Barrasso just mentioned on rare earth minerals. We think like we're being held hostage. There's so much more we can do with the waste streams that we have. We're hoping that you will look at that and work with us. We're hoping to make sure that the technology dollars that we put in our energy bill at the end of the year is put into your budget to immediately start doing good and finding those new technologies through innovation. The Nettle Lab is very important, as you understand, to our entire chain, but it's the one that we have total control over, which has been shortchanged right now. So there's an awful lot of things we want to work with you, and we think that you, with Secretary Granholm, is going to make a great team. We're here for you in a very bipartisan way. We want to work with you. Thank you, sir, again. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, stand adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry. Members will have until 6 p.m. this evening to submit additional questions for the record. So members will have until 6 p.m. this evening. Thank you again, Mr. Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Meeting adjourned.